Hello and welcome to Noob TV Reviews. It's a new series I'm doing on the channel on the Noob News Network. Today we are reviewing King of the Hill Season 14. And I just finished the show yesterday actually, and I watched all 10 episodes. I still don't think it was a good idea for them to release all the episodes at once, but that's just kind of me personally. I think it's better to do week to week. But overall, the show was great. When I originally first saw the trailer, I was a little concerned. Some of the animation looked kind of different. I know, I think it's done by a different animation studio, and of course, like they don't do certain animation how they used to when the show originally aired in the '90s. But I feel like overall, after I actually got into one of the episodes and saw it flowed a little bit better. I don't know if it's just because the trailer had quick cuts, but I think once you kind of start watching the episode, it kind of, I don't know if it's my brain or what, but I think the animation didn't bother me after just a few minutes of watching. One of the first things I wanted to point out that I thought was really a great technique they did was using the intro song to kind of convey exposition of what has been going on in the past 15 years since the show last aired. And it's great. You know, you get to see like, oh, the Hills family move away. You see the new neighbor move in. You see COVID and the aftermath, Bill's depression. So all these kind of like little small things just in like a, I don't know how long it is, probably like a 30-second intro, I think is a really great way to kind of like kick us back off with the show. And one of the things I thought was very impressive about the show is King of the Hill is very unique, in my opinion, compared to The Simpsons, South Park, Futurama, kind of other shows of that era that are in animation, where there's there's some like maybe things that probably wouldn't necessarily happen in real life, but most of the stuff that happens within the show is based in reality. There's no like, eyes getting really big or people getting smashed with certain things or things that would not happen in real life. And I think that's what kind of makes the humor very funny. It's kind of like more of a I don't know if a dry humor is the right word, but it's a very like almost naive type humor where certain characters, you probably know someone like this potentially if you grew up in the South area. I grew up most of my life in Arkansas, but I also lived in Texas where the show is based out of. So you definitely meet people kind of like this. And what I like about King of the Hill is even though like your first interpretation probably is like, oh, they're a bunch of like hateful type people, at least, the main character, there's certain ways he like checks the boxes of like, oh, this is like a Republican or a conservative type person. But in other ways, he doesn't. One of the great episodes was they were making fun. I don't even know the guy's name. I think it's like Andrew Tate or something like that. But he's like that toxic masculinity type bro. And Hank and his younger half brother go to this seminar, and you at first Hank's all into it because it's all like, oh, being about a man and this is how you make money and da da da. But then after he realizes like, oh, they denigrate women, he's like, hey, just because a woman doesn't want to go out with you doesn't mean all women are bad. So it kind of goes against the grain sometimes, where it's like common sense, I feel like, and Hank's a good conduit for that, where it's like, yeah, maybe I wouldn't agree with him as a person like on some of the issues he believes in, but at least overall I feel like he's a morally good person and tries to do the right thing that he thinks is the right thing, and everything. But the show not being on the air for 15 years, I believe the last episode aired in 2010, which is kind of crazy, 15 years. And I saw some posts on social media about like a lot of shows that either started or ended in 2010 or coming back. There's been a big revival. And sometimes when shows come back, they kind of fall flat. I feel like King of the Hill doesn't miss a beat. Each episode is hilarious. I know in the first episode I was laughing within the first 2 minutes. They're flying back from Saudi Arabia, where Hank's been for several years. It doesn't really say exactly how long. I'm assuming like 3 to 5 years, but maybe longer. Because Bobby, it's I think established as 21, so I wouldn't think they would move away when he maybe when he turned 18, that's when they moved, and then until he turned 21, so maybe like that 3 to 4 year kind of gap, potentially. And maybe it's officially been said, but I haven't seen anything, at least in the episodes I watched. And but in that scene, Hank's having trouble going to the restroom, and it's a really long flight. I've been overseas when I was in the military, so I think the longest flight I've been on is like a 13 or 14 hour flight to Korea. And it's just Peggy's like telling all the passengers like, oh, Hank has a narrow urethra, and every year it's gotten worse, so it takes him forever to pee, and stuff like that. So I think Peggy, Hank, and Bobby are fantastic. They feel like, hey, these are what these characters would be if we did a time skip to today's world. I also think this is a great moment for King of the Hill to come back because it's post COVID. There's some subject matter that they can tackle. It's funny, like when you hear like Dale Dribble, who's like that conspiracy theorist nut. He like won the mayor, but then he didn't believe the results. He's like the ultimate QAnon type person, but in a funny way. And then he talks about in another episode having a Patreon, and it's just like all these terms that didn't really exist like 15 years ago, being said by these characters is hilarious. Some things I did want to point out. I did feel like, speaking of Dale, and the character of Luann and her husband Lucky, and then even the actor who plays John Redcorn, unfortunately, not they passed away. So you really feel that. Luann was always like a pretty funny character to interact with Bobby, and I know Bobby's kind of more grown up, and we still have Connie and Joseph, but you do feel their absence. I feel like also Khan shows up. He's voiced by a different actor. That didn't really bother me. It's weird because you kind of have a certain voice with a character, but they changed it, so it didn't really bother me. Dale, even though the voice actor I think recorded 6 episodes, it didn't really sound like him, even like the entire run. But I don't know if that's because I don't know if that voice actor was going, through that like some kind of treatment. I'm not sure how he passed away, but I don't know if that affected his performance. It never really it kind of sounded like him, but maybe it was going for like an older version, or if he smoked more cigarettes. I'm not really sure, because Dale has a very distinct voice in the original run of the show, the first 13 seasons. But rest in peace to all those actors. I wish they could have been a part of the show. I think it would have been amazing to have everyone back. But that's kind of the thing that happens with anything in life. People pass away, and you have to, if you want to tell a story, sometimes you leave them out or you recast, and you kind of that's just how life goes when it comes to movies and television. Even in just regular life, everyone has to deal with this. So rest in peace to all them actors. But like I said, some of the characters did feel missed. The 10 episodes went really quick. They were all very good. I think overall I would give the season probably, like, honestly, like a I would say a 9, maybe even a 10. Probably a solid 9 for me. Just because no episode where I felt like, oh, this is a waste of time. Can we get to the next one? Nothing felt like filler. Nothing. I feel like every episode I was laughing, and I think that's a good thing. And then I also like just like Hank's dynamic. Hank has always been kind of like the real core of the show, and you can just kind of tell with him going through these different scenarios. Like there's one episode where they get to go to Cowboy Stadium, and it's like one of the best days of his life, but then Bobby's girlfriend kind of ruins it, and he's like, we can never go back. And him, I think it's in the maybe second or third episode, he goes to Bobby's restaurant, which is a German Japanese fusion place, and they use charcoal, and Hank has a heart attack that Bobby's using charcoal, but then he kind of comes around and being more authentic. And it's funny how Hank seems like he's kind of he's able to take scenarios and not always go what, like, if you were an outsider, never watched the show, you'd probably think, oh, this show is about a certain thing. But when you go into it, you're like, oh, this is like a typical family dealing with certain issues or circumstances that pop up, and how they respond. I think one of the funniest things in the entire season, there's a episode in the original run where Will Ferrell is like the soccer coach, and all the guys make fun of him. Soccer is, for losers. Don't play soccer, even though outside of America, soccer or football is the most popular sport in the world. Um, and when he comes back from Saudi Arabia, he's a huge soccer fan, and he becomes like a referee, and he's refereeing kind of like middle school and elementary, I guess, type games, and doing really well because he knows all the rules, and he kind of fits his personality. He's very like, rules and instruction based, like kind of person where it's like, oh, you follow the rules, and this is how you build something, or the process. And I think that's why that game appeals to him. And there's even another episode where he's like, oh, soccer taught me that it's okay to have ties. So this has really changed the character, and I think that was a great thing to add. Of course, then he gets his big chance to ref a high school game, but Dale thinks he's a spy. Him and Bill kidnap him and try to give him, or about to give him, truth serum. Of course, Hank says, oh, no, actually, I'm a double agent spy, because he knows how to deal with Dale. And by the time he gets back to the stadium from where he, got kidnapped by Dale and Bill, they're playing pretty much football. And Peggy's like, hey, you can't, we're in Texas, soccer is never going to be that popular. So I don't know, just overall, that was like I think that was like one of my favorite episodes of the season, just with the development of Hank as a character from the original show that I watched growing up as a kid. Another thing I think really stood out was Bobby. They kept the same voice actor, which I think was a very smart choice. I was reading online that they thought about maybe like casting someone else, but I'm glad they kind of kept that same voice and feel. Him kind of he kind of dates that Willow girl who I mentioned. Who went to the Cowboy Stadium and did something crazy. I don't want to spoil it too much, but go watch that episode. It's hilarious and crazy. But it's kind of like his story and him meeting Connie again that they haven't talked to in years, and seeing where that's going to go. I think it was really well done. And then I'm also happy that I saw that season 15 will be happening. I just hope that they do release it week to week. For me personally, that just like makes it feel very, you can kind of talk about it like I like Stranger Things, for example. This is the perfect show that I always give when I give this argument. It's a great show, but once it releases the season, me and my wife will watch it. We'll pretty much binge it, or watch it every day. And then when it's over, and then it takes like 2 or 3 years for the next season to come out, we're like, what happened? And I don't remember half the things that happened. I feel like when you have week to week, it kind of really builds up a show, and I really think about like Game of Thrones, or The Last of Us, or even Andor. The first season did that, but then I think the second season did like 3-episode burst. I still think week to week is the best strategy. It kind of gives you that time to have that water cooler moment. You can talk to your coworkers, your friends about like, oh, did you catch out this episode? And then there's a bigger pop. There's the initial huge pop when it's all dumped at once, but then it kind of dies down really fast. I feel like when you have, this had 10 episodes, so that would have been 10 weeks, pretty much 2 months of talking about King of the Hill. Instead, it's like, I'm sure most people have either watched it, came out last Monday, so they either have watched it or they're going to catch it when they can, but it doesn't stay in the zeitgeist of pop culture. So that would be my biggest hope is, I saw that they're getting rid of the Hulu app next year. I'm assuming the next season won't come out until sometime next year, maybe the year after. I don't know. Every show, it seems like, takes 2 years to make nowadays. But if they do come out next year and it's on Disney Plus or even Fox, they'll, I'm not sure. I'm assuming it'll just come out on Disney Plus. I do hope they do like week to week. I think that would be a smart strategy. But overall, I really enjoyed the episode. And at first, like I said, I was maybe going to do like kind of like I do with my other podcast, The Board Experience, and go through each episode of season 14. But I thought I would just do kind of like more of a high level, my overall thoughts of the episode, and just kind of do it here on a new kind of playlist I'm going to start doing, a Noob TV reviews, and then I'll have Noob movie reviews as well in the future. I've really been enjoying making content for the channel and having fun recording. If you can let me know at the bottom in the comments what your thoughts on King of the Hill were, and what were your favorite moments. Did you miss some of those characters that unfortunately passed away? Do you think this season was just as good as previous seasons, or do you think it kind of went down in quality? For me, overall, it felt like, hey, this is the next evolution of the show, and it felt very natural, and it didn't feel gimmicky at all, and it felt great to see these characters again and have this kind of humor. And I think it came out at a perfect time. So please follow, like, and subscribe. Peace out.